Well, hello, that's me again. Today is November 3, 2024. It is the I'm here in Seattle morning of Sunday. For some people, it's evening, and we are 1 hour back, which allowed us to sleep a little bit longer. And let's start with things which are happening. I mean, as I already stated, weekend or no weekend, it makes no difference whatsoever because events are unfolding with such speed that it's difficult to really react properly to them. So, but we will start with things which are really important and we'll start with the events, at the line of the combat contact in Ukraine. But we will start with this. Here's my good friend Larry Johnson, who writes and about New York Times article. And he's talking about that New York Times considers Ukraine is in trouble. And he is absolutely correct when stating that if you want to read an excellent example of schizophrenia, take time and read the New York Times piece published on Friday. As Russia advances, US fears Ukraine has entered a grim phase. Well, we know that Ukraine was in the grim phase for some time now, but Larry is talking about this article. Here's this article. And this is New York Times, and it was on Friday, and as you can see yourself, they kind of clarify a little bit about that weapons supplies are no longer Ukraine's main disadvantage. American military officials say, okay, sure, yeah, we can go with this thesis if you wish, but then they come up with this thing here. You continue to read this, you see the group of 4 people, none of them have any clue what they are writing about, because they are cheap propagandists basically. So, but look at this. Here what they say, that American military and intelligence officials have concluded that the war in Ukraine is no longer a stalemate. Well, it's difficult to explain to those military and intelligence officials in the United States that it never was a stalemate. And whatever they knew about the operations, whatever they've been taught about operations in the West Point or the Commander General Staff College at Leavenworth, Kansas, they can throw it away in the garbage because they do not understand what modern war is, or for that matter, any war is of the large, which consists of large combined arms operations. They do not definitely understand what is the strategic defense because the United States simply has no clue what it is. So they say as Russia makes steady gains and the sense of pessimism in Kiev and Washington is deepening. Well, yeah, sure. Well, we can also agree with this statement. However, look at this, what these guys write. The Ukrainian military is struggling to recruit soldiers and equip new units. The number of its soldiers killed in action about 57,000. Well, it's not 57, but it's fine. It's half of Russian losses, but still significant for a much smaller country. So in accordance to these people, here are their names. Julian Barnes, Eric Schmidt, Helen Cooper, and Kim Barker. They state, and we know that New York Times is basically a sewer of journalism, as are most people who work there, but they imply that actually Russians lost 114,000 killed. Okay, so well, let's take a look at actually at the backgrounds of those people. We'll take just one guy, this Julian, whatever the name whatever, Julian Barnes. Yeah, here it is. So as you can see yourself, look at him. Look at his, glance, the eyesight, so of the man who saw so many things and knows so much. So, and he says that I'm a reporter covering the U.S. intelligence agencies and international security matters for the New York Times. Okay. And so what I cover, I write about American intelligence community, including the Central Intelligence Agency, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, blah, 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 blah. What is his background? He lists basically all the kind of the fake news outlets, which are all branches of propaganda machine in the United States. And so he then comes down to says that I have a bachelor's degree in social studies from Harvard College, where I led the school newspaper. Wow. So you may now understand that, be that Julian Barnes or whoever other three who wrote this garbage, they have no clue what they're writing about. They are writing what they are told. And of course, most of them, they provide still steady flow of the BS from Kiev regime and from their CIA curators, because those people are absolute nincompoops. And here we have to come to the issue, which is, of course, factual situation, if you wish, of what is happening in terms of the losses for the armed forces of Ukraine. So today, actually yesterday, pardon me, they lost 2,295 people. You can see yourself, plenty of tanks, plenty of artillery, mortars, and things of this nature. And obviously, it doesn't add up to the picture which they write, but again, you have to understand, New York Times is the propaganda outlet. It's a cheap rag now, and they basically, most of those people who work there in the decision-making capacity, they could be charged with the war crimes, which, range in their spectrum, so to speak, from Ukraine to obviously Middle East. But so let's take a look at the map of our good friend Marat Khairunin, and we will talk about this a little bit of what is happening. So as you can see yourself, if you look attentively at this map, and this is the map for the 11th, pardon me, today's map, 3rd of November. And I deliberately I underlined in red the Ugledar, which has been liberated recently. And on the left, highlighted in yellow, you can see yourself the scale. And Marat and people who work with him, professional military, they had to basically come up with the two different shaded lines. You see, now it is red, which is the line of the combat contact on the 1st of October, and the kind of yellowish, line, which is line for the 31st of October, 31-day difference. Now, if you take a look at, for example, the distance Russians covered from Ugledar to Trudovое, you will see yourself that using this scale, we are looking at probably 15, 17 kilometers at least in these few days. And the movement continues, and as you can see yourself, the line moves steadily to the north. And what can I say? Kurakhova, Russians are already inside Kurakhova. And that tells you pretty much everything you need to know about what is happening, especially when one considers that now you can say that the average movement of Russian forces is about 1 kilometer per day. So not bad, considering the fact that Russians are breaking through probably the most fortified area in Europe. And, well, pretty good. And so we can see on the scheme of the Kurakhova, and this is not the map, it's scheme, as you can see yourself, as I already constantly state this. Now, here we have the situation so that, yeah, you see, Russians are already inside Kurakhova. So it's just a matter of time now before Kurakhova falls, and so then we have all kinds of the nasty things happening to armed forces of Ukraine. And here is the issue. When you look attentively at the backgrounds of those morons from New York Times, or for that matter, any kind of the propagandists from, and whatever their curators from CIA or Pentagon are. The fact that they imply that Russians are somehow suffer more casualties than Ukraine, it's just their coping mechanism, it's the self-medication, because they know they're losers. And fact is, in what times, since when it's became actually to be fashionable in Russia, for example, to look at New York Times, which was quoted like a few years back, like one of the authoritative sources, to look at it and say, yeah, that's tabloid basically, and those bunch of human trash which work for them. But look at this. This is what they do not understand. Here is, we're going back to the Lanchester. in Lanchester model, it doesn't work everywhere. It merely gives you the framework. And what they do not understand is that obviously, if you take a look at the first left graph, which is QT and P of T, I mean the quantity of the forces, which is one is Q, which is green, and another P, which is red, then as you can see yourself, force Q is much larger. So if they have approximately same combat effectiveness, like alpha P equals alpha Q, so you see yourself over the time, once they clash, in the direct clash, let's say with the swords and spears, you see yourself that the Q sustains very few casualties. It goes from 900 to about 800, and the force which is smaller, which is the force of P, goes from 410 to a 0, or basically disintegrates and begins to run. So, but now, depending on the circumstances, if you take a look at the rightmost graph, you can see yourself that, for example, if the force P, which starts at 500, and the force Q, which starts 1000, twice larger, but alpha P, which is the combat effectiveness of P, equals 6, that means 6 times more of alpha Q, you see yourselves, this force actually is what? Going to sustain some casualties, but the Q force, which is green, will be ultimately destroyed because P has better combat effectiveness, 6 times more. And in this case, this is what we see actually at the line of the combat contact in well, pretty much across the whole front. And when you consider the fact that, look at this, the geraniums are flying without any being impeded by any air defense over Kiev. So, well, what can I say? Russians have now overwhelming technological, well, essentially advantage, which of course is basically involves such things as close air support. It involves the standoff, short range, long range weapons, precision weapons. It's definitely the fire productivity is several, probably couple of actually couple of orders of magnitude more than that of Ukrainian forces, which are being now slaughtered. But that those people in New York Times, they do not have the toolkit. They will not understand that they write a sheer propaganda, which they are. They're cheap propagandists. I wouldn't allow them to mow the lawn in the front of my house because they don't have any. Well, sure. I mean, he was the the editor of the school newspaper. Wow, So, and this is just the demonstration to you of what is happening there. Russians do sustain certainly some casualties. Make no mistake. They do, but I mean they are incomparable to compare to what is happening, and basically destruction and demolition of those forces of the armed forces of Ukraine, and whatever their NATO component which is being trapped there. They are primarily the barrier troops. They shoot in the backs. I mean they don't have enough basically courage to really go at it. Some do. They are getting killed immediately. So, and this explains to you why they continue, the mainstream media continue to spew the BS basically, and it's even New York Times that talks about the fact that Zelensky is basically he is exhausted and tense. Well, yeah, give him more cocaine, for crying out loud. That's the only way he can really address his issue of obvious depression. And he understands he will be killed one way or another. So, but, well, yeah, no, he is not gonna living out his days calmly in some villa in Florida or in Switzerland or Italy. No, the guy is a dead man walking. And that brings us to other thing, and this is critical. So, the idea that these people from American political class or from media, they still think that they're so cool, they're so tough, the knowledge of which none of it is true when it relates to them. We have Mr. Trump, and I understand we already voted actually. So, and we are 2 days before the basically election day. But Mr. Trump, so he comes out and says, you know what? Yeah, the U.S. Republican presidential candidate has said he would unite the two superpowers if re-elected. Yes, we know Trump is capable; he has those, magical powers. But we are a failing nation. Well, yeah, we know that. I wrote about this for a long time now. So he said we are a nation in a very serious decline. Good, good. It's good always when alcoholic, for example, wants to start the road to recovery. Alcoholic, he or she needs to basically tell and admit that, yeah, I am sick and I'm in decline. I need to do something about it. That's the first step. Good. But here he says, look at what these stupid people have done. They allowed Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, and others to get together in a group, Trump said here, and he said, we united them because of the oil. No. It's not because of the oil, Mr. Trump. And that's where it starts, that instead of taking the proper path of a proper assessment why this unification happened, he begins to say things which are just oil. No, it's not just energy. By far, by far not all of it is energy. The much larger set of factors plays in this unification, and so no matter how he tries now, he will not be able to drive wedge between Russia and China. So, but yeah, he always thinks that he is, omnipresent, while simultaneously admitting that United States is nowhere near what it tried to present itself for the last 30 years. And that brings us to the critical point, which basically I wanted to make today, because it is crucial, it is critical, and we need to address it. And yeah, I could have gone on the, discussing on the issue of Turkey saying now that, and it's through its foreign ministry, that they want Ukraine, to return back to all those borders from of 1991 and things like that. Yeah, I'm not gonna go there. I mean, Turkey is the master of its own fate, and they will decide if they want to be in BRICS or they will be, just waiting outside the door of the European Union. So it's their matter. But here's the problem. Remember last or video before that, I talked about this. This is a famous photograph of the T-34, pardon me, 85, which it was the monument in Germany. And as you can see yourself, in German, it was written there, liberate us again, or free us again, meaning that Russians just get the hell out of Germany. Russians obliged. This was, written, and Russians went away. NATO never did. And so we have now NATO, so to speak, playing all those games with, for example, like history. Here it is. And that's what I'm on record for many years, that essentially it will be rewritten. It will be rewritten by British and Americans, and the Russians wouldn't be even present in it. So the British ambassador to Serbia tried to belittle the role of Soviet soldiers. So he wrote, Mr. Ferguson, the ambassador to Serbia, he wrote that, on the topic of the 80th anniversary of liberation of Belgrade from Nazi invaders, to cast shadow on the exploits of the Red Army and the People Liberation Army of Yugoslavia, and the other hand, artificially raise the deposits, London, not deposit, it's machine translation, the role of London in cleansing of Serbian land from Nazis. Yeah, British were not present there whatsoever, but yeah, that's what they like to do. They like to take the credit for something they never did. And as you can see yourself, I mean, he was writing about this, that actually Serbia was liberated by Ukrainians. You know how? Well, the attempt to attribute to one of the peoples of former USSR, to the Ukrainians, now cynically used by Westerners as self-destructive tool for inflicting a strategic on the defense of Russia, the main role in the implementation of the Belgrade strategic offensive operation. And the point is not at all in terms of kindergarten speculations around the fact that combat missions in Serbia were carried out by the Third Ukrainian Front, which until 1943 was called, in fairness, the Southwestern and Southern France. But it was all obviously in inseparability of the Red Army on a national basis. Russians, Ukrainians, Tatars, what have you. So, well, yeah, because that front, army group, was called the Third Ukrainian Front, commanded by consummate Russian Marshal Talbuchin, outstanding man of outstanding talents. Well, he calls that, well, Ukrainians actually liberated Serbia. Russians have been, yeah, the Russians are those, barrier troops shooting in the backs of those minorities. So that's pretty much what they do in England. Or Russians raped everybody, as their Sir Mr. Beaver, Anthony Beaver, who is not a historian, really. I mean, if he probably will pass for historian somewhere in United States or Great Britain, but the guy is a shyster. And so, but yeah, he's Sir, and he writes all garbage, about World War II, not even using Russian sources. But yeah, what do we know, really? And so they say that the indications of the alleged disorganization of the Soviet military quartermaster service and the shortcomings of weapons and uniforms of the Yugoslav partisans found by Ferguson in the archival records of one of the British officers are called petty. Yeah, that's what they do. They get some opinion of probably some guy who was attached there. There were American and British and even French military attaches with the Russian Red Army troops. They have been there. And so, yeah, the guy suddenly noticed that, oh, yeah, the Yugoslavian army wasn't properly equipped. Sure, let's blame it on Russians. Let's blame it, on whatever else, And what can I say? This is the picture which is being drawn about World War II in the West. And this is what I'm saying. It is inevitable. It is going to happen. Mark my words. They will rewrite it. That in the end, the Stalingrad and Kursk will be won by American and US and British armies. So, because, yeah, it's going there. So, and so when you look at this, you have suddenly very few men of honor in political elites, if you wish, in the West, and you have this impassionate, basically appeal or statement by none other than our incomparable George Galloway. And he, a couple of days ago, he spoke on the YouTube, and he explained that Russia will never come knocking on our door again. Absolutely, he is absolutely correct. Russians had it with the combined West, and especially with Europe, which provided, the worst world, it's actually historic trauma. When the unified nations, ranging from French to Italians, well, obviously Germans, Finland, oh my God, all those unified people invaded Soviet Union in 1941. And guess what? Today, those allies, which, sat out most of the fighting, behind the oceans and the canal, they now begin to rewrite the history, and Russians had it. They do not want to communicate with people who have no honor, integrity, and this is what George Galloway says. In the end, it's not just economy. And this, what is really, really important to understand. Russians will not talk to the EU at all. There is nobody to talk in the EU. But the point is, Russians are done with Europe and the combined West, obviously. And if you go to RIA News and you look at this interesting article, as you can see yourself yesterday, by Victoria Nikiforova, and she writes that both are worse. Europe is doomed to Russia, which is absolutely true. And the reason that Europe is doomed to be tied to Russia, make no mistake, keep in mind the accuracy and nuances of this title or headline. Europe is doomed to be tied to Russia. Russia doesn't want Europe anymore. Not European Union, especially not old Europe. And so, she mentions this the good old song from 1986, I believe, a famous band, Russian band, Nautilus Pompilius, which is called Goodbye America, or this is how you can translate the latest plaque on the intellectual European edition of Politica. It's meaning that it's no matter who wins the presidential elections in the United States, European-American relations will never be the same. America is less and less interested in Europe. I agree. It's interested only as the food, period. And so Europe remains alone. Euro-Atlantis is bemoaned their relations with Washington, like an old jumper from whom another lover is going to run away after she gave him literally everything to the last penny, which is very true. And so she writes, Victoria writes very interesting, descriptions, given interesting descriptions to Europe and Europeans. Aging and broken, allergic to power politics, fragmented, afraid of any risk, Europe evokes in Americans not love but growing disgust. Actually, it is very true. That's what happens also to Russians. They are disgusted and there's no love. And she says, and she correctly, refers back to the Europe which once was. Not everything was good there, but look at this. She says that it is impossible to believe a conglomerate of once prosperous countries with a population of 500 million, with developed industry, with legendary cultural wealth and the heritage of predatory ancestors in their blood, has turned under the control of Brussels Euro-Atlanticists into an indistinct something that does not know what to do alone on the world stage. The homeland of conquistadors and geniuses, pirates and colonizers, Napoleons and Talleyrand's, whines and scratches its ass nostalgic for the master's boot. Indeed, what is to be done? Nothing. It's abandoned. It will be abandoned with the exception, as Nikiforov correctly stated, that's what Americans will do. Today it is obvious that its short flourishing became possible only due to the plundering of the former socialist bloc of the post-Soviet republics, which is absolutely correct. Breaking up of Yugoslavia, it was Germany's plan. And of course we have Poland, we have Slovakia, we have other places which have been completely deindustrialized because everything was, built around Germany, providing the complete or finished products while everybody would buy them, and Germans will become, and then to a degree, French and countries of this second temper will become rich. Well, they did for a while. And so Washington allowed the European vassals to jackal in this space. And the guys turned around. They frankly ruined industry and energy wherever they could reach. They turned the developed countries of former socialist capital into beggars, sitting on subsidized territories, and took all day testy assets for themselves. This was enough for 30 years. Who was to be robbed next? And then, unexpectedly, Europeans themselves found themselves in the role of a victim. In a matter of years, Washington killed local business with coronavirus lockdowns, ruined the industry, blew up Nord Stream 2. And this is exactly what is being done to Europe. They will become poor. They are already becoming poor. Fact is, they will become very poor. And many people do not understand, as most of them, the graduates of those useless degrees in economics, which is essentially MBAs, they don't understand how industries operate and what they give. And so that's what she says. And I agree completely. I wrote about it. You go to my blog starting from 2015. I was warning, as many people did, that Europe is merely a food. It's sacrificial lamb, which will be, basically declined or, sacrificed on the altar of the American, hunger. Americans need to eat too, And so she says that's the future of Europe. And pardon me, Europeans, but that's true. And that doesn't mean that I hate all Europe. I am European man by any stretch of imagination. But then Europe will return to its natural state of poverty and misery, because this is exactly where it is all going. And yes, and she says, Nikiforova, which is, I agree entirely, that it is really impossible to beat relations with the European Union. Inarticulate women and effeminate men in Brussels are mired in their monstrous arrogance. They are sick with racism. We are barbarian Muscovites for them. However, it is possible to talk to individual countries, to conduct a dialogue with smart politicians who are supported by millions of voters. And so, of course, look at Mr. Fico, the president of Slovakia, and of course, Viktor Orban. You talk to them. You do not talk to those people. You don't talk to Germans. You don't talk to French. They are, effeminate men and, inarticulate women. That's who they are. And she correctly concludes that who will win the elections in the United States is really not important. And as I constantly repeat, it has become my mantra, never again the foot of the Russian soldier will be on the European soil, period. Whatever the calamity will be there, hunger, misery, I mean, internal strife, ethnic cleansing, Russians have no business there. So Europe has to deal with it on its own, and if it dies during this, which it will die, well, too bad. I am the proponent of the Iron Curtain with Europe for a long time, except for those countries which really find courage and integrity, such as Viktor Orban and Robert Fico, for example, to find ways of articulating their position which is sensible. Then yeah, sure, you can talk with them, but all Europe, especially all those Germanys, Frances, Spains, let alone United Kingdoms, you don't talk to them. They are done. And what can I say? Many people, my friends from, not only my friends from United Kingdom, and many others who visit my blog, they write openly, Andrei, you don't even understand. We are a third world country now. So, which is, yeah, with the exception of English Premier League and their stadiums. That's about it. And this is a situation today. And they continue to self-medicate. They try to say to themselves that everything's fine, which it is not. It's a catastrophe, it's a civilizational catastrophe, and it only accelerates. And now, in this case, Nikiforov is absolutely correct. No matter who wins, basically, in the United States, Harris or Trump, I mean, makes no difference. Fact is, as Medvedev stated, his support endorsed Harris. Let Harris, basically win, and we'll see how United States will basically, dissolve essentially. So is it possible? Well, absolutely it is possible. It doesn't mean I don't know the probability, but it's certainly not trivial. So, and this is what I wanted to tell you today on this weekend, and I'm sorry that I didn't bring better news to you guys, but we are observing the non-stop rolling collapse of the basically all institutions, especially culture, in what used to be known as the combined West. And the United States obviously will exploit Europe, which is already doing this. And yes, Nikiforova writes, probably because she read my books, I said, no military-industrial complex of Europe will be actually subverted. They will shout down the throats of Europeans, all those weapon systems which are produced in the United States and which are utterly ineffective and very expensive. F-35s, Abrams tanks, whatever, if they restore the Abrams tanks production and things of this nature. So, and yeah, we observe it in real time. It's just absolutely fascinating. And to some sense sad, but you know what, old Europe was that anyway for a long time now. And this is what I wanted to tell you guys today at the end of the weekend. And as always, those who like what I do, please subscribe to my channel. And those who can afford, please buy me a coffee and or support me on Patreon. It will allow me to continue to do what I am doing. And what can I say, guys? Have the nice rest of the weekend, and I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.